Mr. Chancellor, it is my pleasure to present to you Dr. Jonathan Vance, Distinguished University Professor, Department of History. It is my pleasure to introduce our Distinguished University Professor, Dr. Vance, who is an internationally recognized leader in Canadian military and cultural history with 10 books and 80 peer-reviewed articles to his credit. He holds the J.V. Smallman Chair in History. As a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and as the Canada Research Chair in Conflict and Culture, Jonathan is a prolific writer historian whose work is marked by the distinction of having both scholarly impact and mass appeal. Two of his titles have appeared on the Globe and Mail's top 10 books list, and he has enjoyed considerable success attracting research funding from major granting agencies such as the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, Canada Foundation for Innovation, in addition to his Canada Research Chair. He has given more than 50 public lectures on a wide range of subjects relating to war, culture, and identity. He is published widely in national and local newspapers. He is frequently interviewed on radio stations across Canada, and he has served as an advisor or on-screen commentator in several major television documentaries over the past 4 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Distinguished University Professor, Dr. Jonathan Vance.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's a great honor to have the chance to address Convocation. This is Western's last chance to leave you with something profound, thought-provoking, something insightful, something meaningful, something you can all take home with you as a nugget of wisdom to hold close to your heart and guide you through the challenges of life. Unfortunately, Sean Atleo couldn't make it, so you have me instead. If you'd like to go to the lobby after, you can buy your t-shirts that say, "My family came to Convocation and all I got was this stupid history prof." I did not have a great deal of time to prepare an address. I was tempted to use my valedictory address when I graduated from high school in 1981, but I figured that would be really embarrassing and massively inappropriate. However, I did want this to be a little like a valedictory address. The word, after all, is from the Latin meaning to say farewell, and that seems entirely appropriate for this occasion. A valedictorian is usually a student saying farewell to former classmates. My address this morning will essentially say farewell to former students on behalf of Western. My remarks will touch upon the following matters, and feel free to write these down. History, the value of a liberal education, frozen meat, the First World War, Major League Baseball, the zombie apocalypse, Sir Arthur Currie, prepared mustard, and the Girl Scouts. However, the first order of business is to thank all of the families and friends for entrusting Western with the people who are graduating today. One day, not so many years ago, you came from across the city, across the province, across the country, out of the country, and dropped off at our gates a new group of students. I imagine they were rather nervous to be left here. I imagine you were rather nervous to leave them here. It was a big step on your part, but it was also a big step on our part. And whether your loved one came directly out of high school or came here to complete a doctorate, we recognize that we assume great responsibility with each new group of students. And in a sense, we are returning them to you today I hope better than they were when they arrived here. I also want to thank those of you who are here in the front who, until quite recently, were students, undergraduates and graduate students. Like baseball legend Lou Gehrig, I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth, because every year I get to meet a new group of students coming in and see another group off into the world. And every year I hear from former students who graduated 10, 15, 20 years ago who want to share some great success with me. And that's incredibly rewarding. And for those of you who are getting your doctorates today, I would say to you, when you move into that perfect faculty position that you will undoubtedly find, never underestimate the joy that teaching will bring to you. And never pass up the chance to see your students convocate. It's a wonderful experience. So I would like to thank our graduates for being endlessly entertaining, passionate, engaged, curious, enthusiastic. Also somewhat infuriating, I have to say. Can you just put page numbers on your essay? It's not that difficult, please. On this day in history, the 10th of June, 1720, an Englishwoman named Mrs. Clements sold the world's first prepared mustard. So if you're keeping score, you can cross that off your list. It has no relevance whatsoever to my remarks. I teach history. History is a subject, but it's also a way of thinking. Now, I have no great hope that those of you who have been in my classes will remember, retain all of the subject matter. Jackie, do you remember when the Battle of Loos took place? Not a clue, okay. Fortunately, there was no real need for you to retain all of the subject matter. Not once in Pretty Little Liars have I heard someone say, "We could find A if only we had someone who understood the Treaty of Versailles." So history as a subject is one thing. But I use the subject to teach the way of thinking historically. That's a way of understanding that our world is made up of continuities and discontinuities, that things in the present happen because of things in the past, that what will be is a product of what is, but also what was. Now, these continuities and discontinuities are complicated. They take unlikely forms. They appear in unlikely places. And for that reason, thinking historically demands an imagination. The most important skill that you can bring to the study of history is an imagination. Now, we can teach you the dates and the facts. For example, on the 10th of June, 1915, the Girl Scouts of America was founded. 99 years ago today. We can teach you how to memorize things. We can teach you how to write and how to research. But it's really difficult to teach someone a creative imagination. And you need that imagination to be able to see the past through the eyes of the people who lived it. How did the world look to them? How did they make sense of it? How do we, in this century, project ourselves into the past so that we can understand it on its own terms and not on modern terms? You can't do that without an imagination. Now, this goes well beyond history as a subject of study. It applies to, I think, every discipline that's graduating this morning. And imagination is behind everything that I hope you will take with you when you leave Western. It's behind everything that the university has tried to instill in you. First and foremost, of course, the prime skill that we hope you've learned is how to survive the zombie apocalypse. If you don't know, I will be offering a course next year, History 2186B, called The Zombie Apocalypse. Mark it down. We do hope, however, that you learn other skills. Be considerate. Imagine how your actions affect others, not only right now, but in the future. Be skeptical. Imagine that things might not be all they seem. Don't take things on faith. Don't accept conventional wisdom. Be empathetic. Imagine how others feel. Be idealistic and innovative. Imagine a better way of doing things. There's always a better way of doing things. For example, on the 10th of June, 1869, the steamer Agnes entered the port of New Orleans with the world's first ever shipment of frozen beef. There you go. So if Western has done its job, and if you've done your job, because we can't teach without your help, you will be better prepared to exercise that imagination and to take it into all parts of your life. And here's where I turn to Sir Arthur Currie. As you may know, Currie is the finest general that this country has ever produced. He led the Canadian Corps to a string of stunning victories during the First World War and emerged as one of the most highly decorated military commanders in the conflict. He was born not far from here in Strathroy, but his early years were anything but promising. As a young man, Currie moved west to Victoria, BC to seek his fortune. He tried all sorts of things, from teaching to real estate speculation, and failed at virtually all of them. In fact, when the First World War began, he was facing ruin. He had taken money from his regiment to cover investment losses and could easily have been jailed for embezzlement. First World War gave him a chance to prove himself. And in just 4 years, he went from a shady land promoter to the most highly esteemed soldier in the country. Now, this is not something he planned. He didn't set out from Strathroy as a young man to become Canada's greatest soldier. Currie's path was a surprise. Now, convocations, like sports, are dominated by cliches. But Currie's life demonstrates the fallacy of one cliche that is common at this time of year. Contrary to popular belief, you cannot do anything you put your mind to. I will never play in the NBA. Ross, you will never be president of Portugal. Probably. Maybe you will. However, you can do things that you haven't yet put your mind to, things that you haven't even thought of. Currie took advantage of the opportunities that became available to him, and he found that he was really good at something he wasn't expected to be good at. And he is proof of the notion that everyone can be amazing at something. The trick is to find that something. For Currie, it was public service, first as a soldier and then as principal of McGill University. And in that role, he was called on to offer many addresses like this one. And in November 1923, he spoke at the convocation ceremony for McMaster University. Now, you wouldn't normally look to a retired general for wisdom, but Currie had a way of exceeding expectations. This is what he said. Education, while practical and directed to definite ends, must also be of such a nature that the sense of wonder in the individual shall never die, that romance shall not be atrophied, and that the poetry of life shall not evaporate, leaving behind it the flat and tasteless wine of mere existence. Our universities in Canada should stand for character as against mere intellectualism, and for a liberal education as a sure foundation for professional studies. Let us, with reference to our university and its policy, ask the proper question. Not alone whether the university teaches natural science well, or Arabic well, or mathematics well, but whether the graduate carries away from it a finer character, a more trained and more disciplined and more serious intelligence, and a greater capacity for service to the world. Now, what Currie is saying here is don't just strive for financial success or professional success or material success. Such success without the poetry of life is mere existence. You must foster the life of the mind, the life of the spirit, the life of the soul. When you imagine a better world, as I hope you will do it in a humanistic way. On my office door, I have a quote from the writer and aviator Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, best known as the author of The Little Prince. And he wrote, "We are preparing a world capable of producing 5,000 perfect assembly line pianos a day, but incapable of cultivating a worthy pianist." Yes, the world needs better pianos, but what good are they without the pianists? So I want to leave you today with a call to the imagination. Never stop imagining how things used to be in the past, how things are for other people right now, and how they might be in the future, how they might be in your future. But in your imagining, remember what Curry and Saint-Exupéry said. Remember that the pianist is as important as the piano, and remember to treasure the romance, the sense of wonder, and the poetry of life. Thank you.